It's time, folks. It's time to shut it down, turn the tables, and lock her up. That's what I said. I actually said it. Lock her up.
Good morning and welcome to AM Joy. That little rallying call that we heard all throughout last year's election merited a remix this morning because it has somehow made a comeback. Likely because this week, the drip, drip, drip of reports about possible collusion between the Trump campaign and Russian efforts to hack the election came to a head with the news that Special Counsel Robert Mueller will issue the first indictment of his Russia investigation on Monday. That may well explain the signs of nervousness that we've been seeing both from the Trump administration and from some of Trump's supporters in the media, namely their aggressive attempts to shift the narrative from the real Russiagate to a fake scandal about Russians buying a Canadian uranium company in 2010. And the specious claim that Hillary Clinton personally approved the deal when she was Secretary of State in exchange for a big donation to the Clinton Foundation. Now, it's a conspiracy theory straight out of the book Clinton Cash, written in 2015 by a Breitbart alumnus named Peter Schweitzer and commissioned by none other than Breitbart and Trump strategist Steve Bannon through something called the Government Accountability Institute, ostensibly a foundation based in Florida funded by none other than Robert Mercer. It's not real news or a scandal at all, but Bannon and Schweitzer succeeded in getting major mainstream outlets, including the New York Times, to pick up content from Clinton Cash during the campaign, including about the supposed Uranium One scandal. Now we're seeing the Uranium One hoax from the book resurface in White House press briefings and in conservative media this week, in what sure does look like a coordinated effort to rebrand the phrases Russia scandal and collusion away from Donald Trump and onto Republicans' favorite target, Hillary Clinton. Because every time a Trump insider or associate is asked about the Mueller investigation, we hear this.
The only evidence that we've seen thus far on collusion is with the Clintons or the DNC.
The Uranium One deal really smells.
This is equivalent to what the Rosenbergs did, and those people got the chair. Think about it. Giving away nuclear capability to our enemies.
Who in the Democratic National Committee or the Clinton campaign paid these people, paid them through false names? Where did this money go?
What we should be focusing on are the continued lies of the Clinton administration.
Now, a reminder, Hillary Clinton is not the president. That was decided nearly a full year ago. Just making sure you know, the more you know. Joining me now, senior writer at Share Blue, Eric Boehlert, Washington Post opinion columnist Catherine Rampell, former spokeswoman of the California Republican Party, Jen Kearns, and senior reporter at Mother Jones, Andy Kroll. Thank you all for being here. And Jen, I will start with you. Thank you for being here. Sure. This does certainly seem to be coordinated. We're talking points issued by the Republican National Committee this week to Trump surrogates to, when asked about Russia collusion, shift the story to Uranium One.
Not in those words. You know, the RNC does put out its research pieces. I think the RNC research shop is quite good. A lot of the information sourced in there is independently verified. It includes sourcing from left-wing media publications, Washington Post, others that aren't Fox News. Look, I think it's important that the media is covering this issue, not just the Fusion GPS story, but the Uranium One story.
Why do you say that?
Well, look, I think there are some new developments this week that make it worthy of coverage. The fact that Hillary Clinton and the DNC funded the Fusion GPS Trump dossier, I think, is quite relevant. As did a Republican conservative-leaning media outlet that actually began the contract. That is true. So why does that matter? Because here's the thing about the Steele dossier. Let's do that one first. Yep. The information in it, some of it is actually checked out. And so if, in fact, that document contains relevant and valid information showing that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia or worked with Russian operatives in order to distort the results of the 2016 election, who cares whether the Oppo research for it was paid by both a Republican and a Democrat? Well, look, I put the onus on the Washington Free Beacon as well. Just because a conservative outlet paid for it doesn't make it okay, and it also doesn't let Democrats off the hook. Off the hook for what? None of the information in the Trump dossier has checked out and been independently verified. CBS News, who is no conservative publication, has checked it out. They found several things that were actually outright false. Michael Cohen, Trump's own own attorney had to produce dozens of documents to show that he himself was not where the Trump dossier said he was.
Okay, you're talking about the one thing in the dossier, and I'm not going to get derailed into a whole debate about the dossier, because this is actually what I suspect that those RNC talking points suggested that you do, is that when you get on a show like this and we want to talk about Russiagate, about these indictments, that you should bring up Fusion GPS and you should bring up Uranium One. Is that something you were told to do?
No, absolutely
or
not.
that was suggested that you should do?
No, absolutely not. Look,
I'm on
various mailing lists of the RNC. You might be on those lists as well. There is information talking about it.
So let's talk about the thing that I think is the most relevant. There is a pending set of indictments that could come down. There could be arrest as well as early as tomorrow in the actual Russiagate scandal, which is the potential collusion of members of the Trump campaign with Russia, or other things. It could be money laundering, it could be tax evasion, we don't know. What is your response? What do you think? What do you make of that?
Look, I think the timing is awfully uncanny.
Why?
The same few days that Robert Mueller is under fire, the Wall Street Journal full editorial board is calling for him to resign or to be fired. Resign from the investigation. This has been a long-running fishing expedition.
Why should he resign from the investigation?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. One, I'm sorry to say, it does go back to the Fusion GPS piece.
This goes back to look what you've done. Let me ask you a quick question before I bring in the rest of the panel. What about the Fusion deal? This is a deal in 2010 to sell a Canadian company to a Russian company, right? What about that deal is worthy of investigation?
The Uranium One deal, you mean?
Yeah.
Look, the Uranium One deal is problematic because you have Hillary Clinton, who is presiding at the Secretary of State's office. We have evidence to show, and this came out in the last week or two, that there was a Russian spy who was getting close to Hillary Clinton. This was reported in the mainstreams. You have Bill Clinton, who is accepting $500,000.
We're not going to get derailed, but I want to ask you a couple fact-based questions.
Sure.
Who got the money when the Canadian company was sold to the Russian company, Uranium One? Who received the money?
I presume the company, but look.
Yeah. Okay. Second question: Who approved the sale? Because when any sort of uranium or any company that sells sort of sensitive type products, and by the way, the uranium that's mined in these mines, right, is for nuclear power. It's not for nuclear bombs, right? But when that happens, there is an organization called CFIUS that approves it. Do you know what CFIUS stands for?
Yes, absolutely.
What does it stand for?
Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States.
How many people sit on that committee?
9 members.
How many have to approve a deal like this?
All 9 of them,
members.
I believe.
How many
Absolutely.
approved this deal?
9 of them.
Did Hillary Clinton sit personally on that deal?
No, but she
did
pushed
not.
for it.
She did not.
You know what? I'd
Hold on.
to hear.
Who is the person who donated to Hillary Clinton, who is related to and had an investment in Uranium One? What is that person's name? Do you remember their name?
They are board members of Uranium One, donated up to $143 million.
Tom Fustra. And when did Tom
the Clinton
Fustra,
Foundation.
did he own any assets in Uranium One at the time that Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State?
You know, I don't know that, but here's what I would.
Sold them.
Here's what I'd like to know.
So hold on one second.
You should want to know
he sold them years before.
Yep.
So what you're talking about is a deal that 9 members of CFIUS approved unanimously, none of whom was Hillary Clinton. You have a donor who separately gave Hillary Clinton donations at a time when she was not Secretary of State. The two things cross in the night. They have no relation to each other. The members of CFIUS have been very clear that Hillary Clinton had nothing to do with approving that deal. She would have had to strong-arm 8 other people in order to get them to unanimously approve the deal, and ultimately the President of the United States would intervene if they saw any problem. The CFIUS people say now, if that deal came before them today, they would still approve it unanimously. There's actually nothing about the deal that's controversial. The only reason we're talking about it is because, per your even admission, which I think is very honest, the RNC would like us to be talking about this now. I want to bring Catherine Rempel in on that point, because it does feel that there is a coordinated effort to get us to talk about Uranium One, something that has not been controversial since 2015.
Yeah, I mean, the Uranium One deal, doesn't make any, or this whole conspiracy doesn't make sense either empirically or theoretically, right? It doesn't make sense empirically in the sense that, the individual elements don't make sense together, a lot of the points that you were making, and theoretically in the sense that, what? Hillary was colluding with the Russians so she could lose the election? That doesn't make any sense. I would put this under the category of basically swift voting. Do you remember swift voting?
Yes, I worked on that campaign on the other side.
The whole concept of this strategy is to make your weakness seem like the opposite party's weakness or the opponent's weakness. We saw this during the election and afterwards with fake news, with, no puppet, you're the puppet. My temperament isn't bad. Your temperament is bad. So it's the same kind of deal with this Russia collusion conspiracy theory. Trump is being accused of colluding with the Russians. So therefore, let's turn the tables and say, no, actually, Hillary, who's not even
She's
running
a private
for
citizen.
anything. She's a private citizen.
And let me ask you about that, because
Yeah.
are you uncomfortable with the idea that in answer to something very serious, which is potential collusion of an American presidential campaign with a foreign power, what your side is doing is attempting to drag a private citizen into essentially show trials in Congress over something that is easily looked up as debunked on Twitter? You can just look it up right now. You could look it up on social. You could look it up on Snopes right now that it has been debunked years ago.
Well, Joy, I think what's interesting is it's actually the opposite of what Catherine just said. It's been the Democrats saying that there was Russian collusion in this campaign.
There's an investigation
and what we
right
look
now
at,
by a special prosecutor and multiple congressional committees on the question of whether there was Russia collusion. Was there a meeting between a lawyer, Ms. Veselnitskaya, and members of the Trump campaign in Trump Tower in which they were promised dirt on Hillary Clinton? Did that happen?
Yes, and look,
Okay.
I said at the time,
connected?
Don Trump Jr., I believe, was a neophyte in letting that happen. I think that was a bonehead
What about
move.
Roger Stone communicating with a Russian hacker?
What about this?
What about Carter Page? What about all of these Trump administration officials or campaign advisors who had undisclosed meetings with Russian officials?
What about this? We still don't know, and there is a suspicion, and Congress is going to be calling people in the next week or two to find out if Russia helped also pay for that Fusion GPS document. We need to hear that, and here's the thing. Let's remember how the Fusion GPS document got into the bloodstream in the first place. It was John Brennan, the CIA director for President Barack Obama, infused that document, which has now been proven to be false.
Are you claiming that
into the
Hillary
intelligence
Clinton
community.
colluded with Russia to lose an election? That doesn't make any
Not to
sense.
lose. I don't think Hillary Clinton ever thought she was going to lose the election until election night.
I'm going to let Eric Bowler in here.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so
this
this is classic Putin, right? This is whataboutism. This is straight out of the Kremlin, as you were kind of saying, deflect. But it's a very specific kind of deflection. You take what is being accused of you and you turn it around. So you say, yes, we might have colluded with a foreign government to overthrow this election, but what about Hillary Clinton? Look, we've seen this right-wing media, GOP, hand in hand before, over 10 years. It's usually to create an investigation for a sitting president, Barack Obama. It's usually to create an investigation for a Democratic nominee. But again, as you say, to create overnight, literally overnight, within 48 hours, this witch hunt, to drag someone from Chappaqua, private citizen, and literally a witch hunt. We have people on Fox News calling for her imprisonment and for her execution. How anyone in the Republican Party can be comfortable with that is beyond me.
And of all people, Sebastian Gorka.
Yeah, and a quick point. This, the three most important House committees don't overnight decide to launch an investigation without this coming straight from Paul Ryan's office, and the assumption is straight from the White House.
Yeah.
And now we have the Mueller indictment.
Well, there is
all very
let me just ask you a
transparent,
question.
and it's all the face of authoritarianism, and it's the face of fascism in America.
Congressman Adam Schiff was on earlier today, and he talked about the fact that the U.S. impanels committees to go and talk to emerging governments in emerging countries. And one of the things that we talk about in building a democracy is that you do not go and prosecute your political opponent who lost an election to you.
Right.
This is not something we typically do in a democracy. Do you have any discomfort with the idea that your party, that the Republicans now want to go and try to drag Donald Trump's political opponent from the last election before essentially show trials in Congress?
I actually think Donald Trump has shown a great deal of restraint, considering there was the chant of lock her up on the campaign trail.
Which he led.
And he has let this investigation go
He
through
is
the
tweeting
course.
this morning that
Here's
Hillary
what I
Clinton
think is
should be
dangerous.
prosecuted.
I think that a false political hit piece, and we now know it was a political hit piece, got infused into the U.S. intelligence community. I have concerns that James Comey got snookered on this, thought it was actual intelligence. I have concerns about Robert Mueller not knowing the difference between a political hit piece and an intelligence piece.
You're doing the talking points very well that RNC wants you to do. And it is classic whataboutism. The idea is that you're attempting to sort of muddy the waters and claim that everyone who is investigating Donald Trump is a criminal. That is what is done in authoritarian countries, not in the United States.
No, I think Donald Trump, look, he has not fired Mueller. I think he realized
let's hold on just 1 second, because the second beat of this, and
we're in trouble.
We're in trouble. So the second beat of this, of course, is that Fox News has been really leading this charge in trying to sort of create this atmosphere of criminality around the people investigating Donald Trump, around Comey, around Robert Mueller, around Hillary Clinton, who is a private citizen. But Andy Kroll, I want to bring you in here too, because this is for now confined line to Fox News, to cable, sort of the cable news wars. But it soon could be spreading to people's local broadcast networks. There is something called Sinclair Broadcasting. We talk about it a fair amount on this show. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what the new developments are in terms of this attempt to spread Sinclair from being just what it is now to also being a Tribune station as well?
Right. Well, what you showed earlier, this, amazing graphic of all these different screens of Sean Hannity pushing this, bogus Uranium One story. And obviously, that's Fox News. You turn the channel to Fox News, you know what you're going to get 24 hours a day. With Sinclair Broadcast Group, you have a different creature in a sense, which is this is a company that controls local television stations, owns and operates them around the country. Nearly 200 stations in most states here in the United States. And what it does is inserts conservative messages, pro-Trump propaganda, as some TV critics have put it, into your local evening news. And so you're going to get the local sports, you're going to get the city council meeting, and then all of a sudden you get Boris Epshteyn, a former Trump White House aide, saying that the president is right about the perils of voter fraud, or that the president is right to confront North Korea in the way that he has. And so you have this message, this pro-Trump message, slipped in between the news, and people at home are watching and thinking, oh, well, maybe this is something I should be paying attention to, and maybe this guy Boris knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, it's between your traffic and weather together. Really quickly, I want to show you one of the other things you get. You get Sebastian Gorka, who claims himself to be Dr. Sebastian Gorka, who was recently released from the White House and has some interesting backgrounds in terms of medals he likes to wear. This is Sebastian Gorka talking about crime with your traffic and weather together.
Our big issue is black African gun crime against black Africans. It is a tragedy. Go to Chicago, go to the cities run by Democrats for 40 years. Black young men are murdering each other by the bushel.
So that he had to be explained by the local news anchors there that black African is not the way that you describe African Americans, but that's on local news. Andy Kroll, you have a piece out in Mother Jones saying that the FCC could soon have a decision that would essentially allow this merger between Sinclair and Tribune to take place. How big would that make Sinclair?
Well, right now it reaches about 40% of all TV-watching households. This Tribune deal will give it 42 more stations, including in the 3 biggest media markets in America, New York, LA, and Chicago. If this deal goes through, this $4 billion deal, and by all indications the Trump FCC is going to sign off on it, Sinclair's reach grows to 72%, almost 3/4 of all households in America. That means a lot more Sebastian Gorka, a lot more Boris Epshteyn, and as we're seeing this week, coverage of this Uranium One deal by some of Sinclair's digital correspondents as well.
Yeah, and perhaps Bill O'Reilly too, Catherine, because Bill O'Reilly is said to be in talks to maybe go to Sinclair Park.
Yeah, it's unclear what's happening with that. I mean, given the revelations about the $32 million settlement. I think the issue here is, look, maybe it's fair to say that antitrust rules written decades ago could be updated. I don't know. The question here is, why are these rules being retooled apparently for this particular merger? Given that you may recall that Jared Kushner actually publicly said that he had a deal with Sinclair last year for favorable coverage, right? That's what's suspicious about this. Not so much that the FCC would be thinking about, well, how do we really reevaluate what's good for consumers, but why are they doing it? Why are they changing, first of all, the formula for what's good without even changing the rules? You know, whether they're meeting that 39% threshold of households. Why are they changing it apparently just for the sake of this particular merger?
Yeah. All right. Well, I wish we had more time for this panel.
Sinclair, by the way, is the Eric Boehlert full employment plan. He'll be busy fact-checking that for a while.
Well, you know what? I mean, but the thing is, I'm sure you never thought you'd have to be fact-checking local news, your traffic and weather together. It's a lot more insidious when it's local news. But I'm sure you'll one person at this table will be happy that it happens. Eric Boehlert, Catherine Rempel, Jen Kurtz, Andy Kroll. Thank you all very much. And next up, Virginia's for Lovers and Dirty Campaign. Stay with us. With the news that Special Counsel Robert Mueller will issue the first indictment of his Russia investigation on Monday. That may well explain the signs of nervousness that we've been seeing both from the Trump administration and from some of Trump's supporters in the media, namely their aggressive attempts to shift the narrative from the real Russiagate to a fake scandal about Russians buying a Canadian uranium company in 2010. And the speeches claim that Hillary Clinton personally approved the deal when she was Secretary of State in exchange for a big donation to the Clinton Foundation. Now, it's a conspiracy theory straight out of the book Clinton Cash, written in 2015 and in conservative media this week, in what sure does look like a coordinated effort to rebrand the phrases Russia scandal and collusion away from Donald Trump and on to Republicans' favorite target, Hillary Clinton. Because every time a Trump insider or associate is asked about the Mueller investigation, we hear this.
The only evidence that we've seen thus far on collusion is with the Clintons or the DNC.
The Uranium One deal really smells.
This is equivalent to what the Rosenbergs did, and those people got the chair. Think about it. Giving away nuclear capability to our enemies.
Who in the Democratic National Committee or the Clinton campaign paid these people, paid them through false names? Where did this money go?
What we should be focusing on are the continued lies of the Clinton administration.
Now, a reminder, Hillary Clinton is not the president. That was decided nearly a full year ago. Just making sure you know, the more you know. Joining me now, senior writer at Share Blue, Eric Boehlert, Washington Post opinion columnist Catherine Rampell, former spokeswoman of the California Republican Party, Jen Kearns, and senior reporter at Mother Jones, Andy Kroll. Thank you all for being here. And Jen,
It's time, folks. It's time to shut it down, turn the tables, and lock her up. That's what I said. I actually said it. Lock her up.
Good morning and welcome to AM Joy. That little rallying call that we heard all throughout last year's election merited a remix this morning because it has somehow made a comeback. Likely because this week, the drip, drip, drip of reports about possible collusion between the Trump campaign and Russian efforts to hack the election came to a head. A Breitbart alumnus named Peter Schweitzer, and commissioned by none other than Breitbart and Trump strategist Steve Bannon through something called the Government Accountability Institute, ostensibly a foundation based in Florida, funded by none other than Robert Mercer. It's not real news or a scandal at all, but Bannon and Schweitzer succeeded in getting major mainstream outlets, including the New York Times, to pick up content from Clinton Cash during the campaign, including about the supposed Uranium One scandal. Now we're seeing the Uranium One hoax from the book resurface in White House press briefing.